Let's talk about the political considerations coming off just one day after the fact. The Biden-Harris 2024 campaign for re-election is official. Joining us now to talk about that was a senior advisor on the 2020 Biden campaign, Rhett Buttle. He joins us now. Rhett, good to see you yet again. You've been watching some of these events the president has had throughout the last couple of days with the South Korean leader. You also saw, though, that 3-minute video released early yesterday morning. President Biden is getting so many questions about his age. He would be 86 if he served a full 2 terms. I want to put up this tweet right here. This was from Fox News White House correspondent Jackie Heinrich because he was asked about it. We just showed our viewers this exchange with one of the reporters there in the Rose Garden earlier. He said, "I took a hard look at it before I decided to run, and I feel good." Also asked if he'd still be running if Trump were not. Biden says, "Yeah, I think I would be." Rhett, how is he going to work around and confront these questions about his age? He's up there in age. He just turned 80. Is he up for it?
I really think this is going to be about job performance, and the president has a really strong record that he can run on. You know, when he decided to run, he talked about restoring the soul of the country and this being a battle for the soul of the country and bringing back values of bipartisanship and democracy. And I think what we saw in the launch and the campaign video is really centered around what are the ideals of democracy? How do we rebuild an economy that works for everyone? And the president has a strong record to run on: a bipartisan infrastructure law that was passed with both Republicans and Democrats, the Chips and Sciences Act, which obviously is being highlighted in the state visit today with South Korea, the Inflation Reduction Act, which makes, you know, new investments in the clean energy economy and brings jobs back to America. And so, you know, I think this is really about what the president has achieved over the last few years. And I think he and the team still feel like there's more to do over the next 4 years to keep the country moving in the right direction. I think that's why he's decided to run.
Okay, but Rhett, it is a valid question. Do you think it's a distraction, though, his age? He's going to get this question from now until Election Day. So a lot of voters, they think he's too old to run. How is the Biden campaign now going to confront those questions, though, do you think? It's going to come up a lot.
I think, look, I think all candidates are going to get it. Obviously, you know, we don't know who the Republican candidate is yet, but it's presumed that it might most likely will be Donald Trump. And, you know, Donald Trump, you know, is in the same age range as President Biden. So in some ways, I think, you know, it just makes it less irrelevant if those end up being the two front runners. But again, I really think the president is going to focus on his record and what he's been able to achieve and, you know, how much he's done in a day. You started the segment by saying he's had a busy day. The man launched a campaign for president and welcomed the president of South Korea the very next day, and has been going since, I think, 8 this morning until the evening. And so, you know, he showed that he's fully capable of continuing to run this country, make hard decisions, make progress on both democracy and the economy. And I think that those are the things that he'll lead on if he gets asked about those questions.
Okay, Rhett, let's talk about the video announcement yesterday. He started off with footage of January 6th. From what we have been hearing from, you know, some of my sources I've been talking to, they think this video was specifically tailor-made to a Biden-Trump rematch in 2024. Does the president, you think, you know, feel as if Trump is the only one he is going to go against?
Well, I don't know exactly what the president's thinking, but look, I think it's the writings on the wall. We see, you know, Trump, you know, rallying support on the conservative side. He seems to still have a stark advantage over Governor Ron DeSantis from Florida, who I think probably would be the next likely option to be able to take it. And so, you know, I think if the calls had to be made today, it would look that it would be a Donald Trump versus President Joe Biden rematch. And I think really what you're seeing the president do is draw a stark contrast between the vision he has for this country, which is a vision of optimism and positivism and a country that works for everyone, versus where Donald Trump left the country, which was literally with gates up around our Capitol and people climbing over the walls and divisiveness and hate. And so that's really the contrast that we're seeing in this message. And we're seeing the president talk about the positive agenda he's built over the last 2.5 years.
Yeah, let's, though, talk about some of President Biden's, I guess, challengers for the nomination. Some have announced. The Fox News poll just was released today, and I want to read this. This is 2024 Dem presidential nominee preference. I'm going to drop this. Among Democratic primary voters, so 62% Joe Biden, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., 19%, Marianne Williamson, 9%. You can see the time frame from when the poll was conducted, and Democratic primary voters plus 5 points. I believe that's the margin of error. So, Rhett, 19% for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. That seems very high.
I don't think there's anything the president has to worry about. We've seen most of the major Democratic apparatus come out and, say that they're going to stand behind the president. And really, when you talk, then ask voters again about, if President Biden is the party's nominee, of course, of which he will be, we see that support really swing towards him. And I think also then when you begin to contrast it with what the options are in the future of the country, people want to buy into a more future vision of the country. So, polls are interesting snapshots at a moment in time, but that's just what they are, as a moment in time. We have a long way till the 2024 election. I think we'll see the polls start to really pull another way.
So you don't think RFK Jr. is some type of spoiler candidate, a la, Ross Perot or what have you? What's going on here?
I don't think so. I think we will see, the full party come behind the president. It's really important with any of these conversations that everyone have a voice in the beginning. I think we're seeing some of that, but I don't expect, at least personally, and I don't think most folks expect at this point, that we'll have some sort of spoiler candidate, at least on the Democratic side. I think the support for President Biden is strong. Again, he's aligned to all the Democratic apparatuses. Most of the rollout for the campaign was done by the DNC. Already strong fundraising numbers, already up with their first additional ad. There was a launch ad, but there was additional ad. We already have campaign leadership names. So we've seen a very professionally rolled out campaign. And I think we're seeing most of the Democratic apparatus strongly get behind President Biden in very short order.
Okay, just Rhett, lastly, while I have you, I want to talk policy for just a moment. You deal with small businesses and the economy each and every day in your line of work. The Biden White House said, raising the debt limit with conditions is non-negotiable. They don't want to negotiate with House Republicans. Biden said there needs to be a clean debt limit. We're getting ever so closer to this deadline, or we risk default. Who has to blink first here? Is it going to be the Biden White House? Are they ultimately going to have to negotiate?
Look, I think there's a time for negotiation, and we've heard from President Biden he's very open to negotiation. This is not the time for it, right? Putting the full faith and the credit of the United States up for negotiation is not the moment to use leverage. Unfortunately, Speaker McCarthy's had a really difficult time keeping control of his caucus. We saw it took almost, 15 rounds for him to become Speaker. We're seeing that he's having the same challenges in the governing, being able to keep control of his caucus. And so I think he's trying to do everything he can do to bring leverage over the Biden administration. And, under normal governing order, negotiation is a good thing. But when we're talking about the full faith and credit of the United States, this is not the moment. We hear from business leaders that this is not good for the economy. They're hoping there can be a clean raising of the debt limit. Both small businesses as well as large private sector businesses and economists are all saying, let's get the debt limit out of the way, then get to normal government order. And I think that that's how the governing process should work. I think that's also what would be best for the U.S. economy.
All right, Rhett Buttle, always good to see you. Thanks so much for your insight. Talk again.
Great to see you, Andrew. Have a great night.